Hey,
How's it going? I am SF Rogers, and welcome to the Author's Chaos. You all know the drill. This week, we're so excited. We have JC Brice with us, and we are so stoked to get to talk to her about her current book she has published and then all of the plethora of things she's working on through the rest of the year. Right, Daniel?
absolutely. And as you know, I'm DL Golden. Quick disclaimer, we are not professionals at this. We don't exactly know everything we're doing, but take whatever advice we give with a grain of salt, and hopefully it'll be a bit helpful for you. So,
All right. Well, let's start with who exactly are you?
That's a loaded question. I'm joking. Well, my government name is Elia Golden. I chose JC Brice because I feel like it's a different side of me than the Golden side, since I have a different career outside of writing and it's not my full-time thing. It's just for fun.
Awesome. How do you know us?
How do I know you, Sarah? How do I know you, Daniel?
now that's a loaded question.
Oh, I don't know. I only married your brother.
True.
Yeah, so disclaimer on
Okay,
that.
so
Our sister-in-law here. So this is our first guest author that we have on that isn't a cover artist here, but
yes, and we're
Yes.
so excited.
So I am the in-law.
And if you've heard us in the last couple of episodes talk about JC Brice and how she kind of pushed us all to greatness, this is the infamous JC Brice. I know personally I'm super grateful that she's around. She has answered the inevitable questions that come with, like, should it take me this long to finish a first draft? Should it take me this long to get a cover? Should it take me this long to be waiting?
Should take you as long as it's fit.
Right.
However long you need.
Right.
yeah, she's kind of been our
That's probably the joys.
go-to.
It's probably the joys of being self-published, is you don't have a little birdie on your shoulder telling you what you have to do and when you have to do it.
Oh, that's right.
So,
All right. I guess my first question for you is how did you come up with your idea for Architecture of Anarchy and kind of the whole overarching theme of those books?
well, that's kind of a long one, but towards the beginning of the book and writing, I changed the plot so many times. I don't even remember the first part of the book, like what it was supposed to be like, because I've changed it so many times. But the Architecture of Anarchy is actually a play off of the song Architecture of Aggression from Megadeth's fifth studio album, Countdown to Extinction. And as I got further into the book and I started adding elements of like war and like political anguish in the book, that's kind of why like I decided to name it The Architecture of Anarchy versus Melody in Brooklyn, because it didn't center around music anymore like I wanted it to. And so that album is obviously one of my favorite albums that I listen to. So there's many themes in there from the song, especially if you go listen to it and you read the book, you can, well, the second book, we'll say the second book, you can really see the different themes from music and how government plays a role in the country's like demise in the book. So that's why it was changed to The Architecture of Anarchy, and it did not stay Melody in Brooklyn, because nothing ever goes as planned.
You're also just like us and not a plotter.
Can be a plotter. It just sometimes doesn't stick to that plot.
And I had talked to Sarah about this. Had you noticed that writing on the second book, you've had to plot out more than you did the first time around to avoid plot holes and things?
Yes and no. So for the second book, I haven't really decided yet. It's something that I've been thinking about, but I may not do a third book in the series. Um, and I've been thinking about how I can integrate that into just one more book instead of there being three in the series. And I haven't really decided how because I haven't completely finished. I've just been sitting on it, waiting to go back to read it. But I started to think about all of the plotting that I would have to do for the third book, and that I did not want to sit down and have to plot that out and figure out how I'm going to make another 300 pages. So I've kind of just been stuck in place.
Yeah,
Well, you also had a moment this
go ahead.
week where you had a moment this week where you messaged our group chat and you could not get into the document for the
Yeah.
second book.
Yeah.
How, like, did you just feel the pit of your stomach like drop, like your stomach just dropped when you couldn't get it to open?
I mean, at first, yeah, I had the same thing happen to me in 2020 when I first started writing the book. It wasn't I couldn't get into the document. I just could not find it at all. Like it was completely deleted, and I don't know how it got deleted. Um, and that was like half of my book. And so it had sat for so long without me going and messing with it that I completely forgot half of what I wrote. And that might be too why half of my plot is different now than it was the first time, because I lost it. And so for some reason, this series has hated me and has just not wanted to continue. And it's just been stuck. But I do have a document that has about 3/4 of the book saved and that I do have access to. So if all else fails, then I do remember the ending to the book. And like I said, I have been thinking about making it just two books in a series instead of three. So if that happens, well, destiny revealed itself. So
Yes.
Talking about writing 2 books now instead of 3, how do you feel about letting go of it coming to the end here? I mean, I feel like I couldn't possibly end my story on my second book. How does it feel coming to that point?
well, in a way good. Um the Architecture of Anarchy was like the first piece of work that I decided that I wanted to sit down and seriously write. And although it will forever be a cornerstone in my writing career, it's not my favorite. Um, and as Sarah mentioned, I do have a lot of things that I've been working on and that I have done and that I'm excited to get out. I'm proud of the Architecture of Anarchy and being able to sit down and finish a whole book, considering the fact that I can't even sit down and sometimes watch a whole episode of Charmed without acting like a squirrel and then running around my house and realizing that it's just playing in the background. So I think I'm good at letting go. I think I'm good at knowing when to close a chapter and move on, so to say.
Oh, I like that. So with that being said, if Unorthodox is the last book in the series, what will be the next thing? Because you have several things in the works right now, not just one other book, but like you've got 2 more stories that aren't even related to each other right now, right? That are
Yeah.
like out for beta reading. So what's that like to have 3 stories going at once?
Well, I have one that's out for beta reading right now. And that's The Court of Shadows and Innuendo. And I plan to release that later this year. I started the book, I don't remember if it was in December or January of this year, but I started it not too long ago, but still long enough that I don't remember when I started it. And so that one I plan to release later this year. And then Revenant is done. I just have plans with that book. And so until those plans are mapped out, it's just going to set until the time is right to release it. So
I get it.
So, how are you finding time? I know that you've got so much on your plate with medical school stuff. How are you finding time to sit down and write essentially 4 books that you're going to be putting out into the world. I feel like my time is consumed by the sequel to Origins by itself.
Well, once I started writing The Architecture of Anarchy, I started working on a lot of things shortly after. So once we moved here to the new house was when I really started picking up on a lot of stuff. So Revenant was started in September of 22. So when I released The Architecture of Anarchy. So I've been working on some of these for a while. And there's some stories that I've worked on that I haven't picked back up on that I might later. But those two are finished and they are ready to go. I just haven't published them yet. So I think right now, no, I don't have a lot of time. But when I was writing them, I did. I don't know how the heck I really sat down. I wrote The Court of Shadows and Innuendo because it was last semester when I started it. And that one was busy semester. I'm gonna watch my language. Busy
Fair enough.
semester.
We appreciate that. So, medical school is one thing, books are another thing. But now you're also talking about picking up doing a podcast. You're also a mom full time. You're a student full time. Like, is it hard to sometimes sit down and even if you have an idea to continue when you have 2 under or 3 under 10 that need you? Like, is it hard to get that, like, to make that space to sit down and be like, hey, I'm just going to do this thing, or I'm just going to study, or I'm just going to do whatever?
Sometimes, yeah. I don't really run into the issue with the kids for the most part. I like to write late in the evenings because I think it worked out great that way because I like to study early in the morning. So generally, like if I'm going to get up early, I get up early and I study. So Jacob usually leaves for work around 6. He gets up around 5. So if I'm up with him at 5, I usually study from anywhere from 5 till Ryan will get home from school. And then usually in the evening is when, I do my thing with the kids. And then late in the evening is when I usually write. I don't know how I'm going to add in the podcast. I have everything scheduled. We're just going to wing it. That's what's going to happen.
Sounds like another set of people.
Can imagine.
Yep.
Yeah, I think to your point, writing doesn't feel to me like a chore like a lot of other things that I have to do, like getting my master's degree work done or getting my work for school, that my actual job done. I think that writing is more of a cathartic thing for me. Do you feel it's the same for you, something that you just use to decompress?
Oh yeah, for sure. Generally, I don't write unless I feel inspired. I know that goes against what a lot of other authors feel, but I just refuse to sit down and write if I don't feel inspired to do it because I feel like at that point I am only doing it to get a book out, to finish a book. And I don't want it to feel that way when like a reader sits down and reads my book. I don't want them to feel like this scene is kind of random or there's no emotion in this scene, so I don't like it, or why did they put this in here, and I feel like we do that when we're trying to hurry up and push something out or write for other people, and I don't want it to feel like a chore. I don't want it to feel like a job, and so I usually only do it when I feel inspired and I really want to write.
I think that was one of the best pieces of information you ever gave me. Because I told you one time that like I'd put my laptop down and I hadn't touched my story in like a week. And you asked me where I was and I was like, hey, I haven't even touched it. I don't feel like writing. And you looked at me and you were like, then don't write. And then Daniel told me the same thing like the very next day. He was like, if you don't feel like it, then don't write. Like it's not worth your time if you're going to sit down and not enjoy what you're writing because your readers won't enjoy it.
Yep.
So it's probably so in that same caveat, what's a piece of advice that you saw that like really helped you along on your journey?
At first, I really wouldn't say anything because I wasn't on TikTok. I wasn't I wasn't doing anything besides just writing. So like I didn't really get into the TikTok community of, like the whole authors side of things until just recently. But um I had an instructor in undergrad. His name was Dr. Zurich, and he has wrote multiple papers, and he helped me write my COVID research paper, and he helped me do a lot of things and organize. And one of the pieces of advice that he gave me for like organization, because like I did talk to him about my book and how I was writing one, and he was like, there's two things that are the same for fiction and nonfiction pieces of work. And he said it's inspiration. And one of the things that he says is he's like, if you're writing something that you do not like, your readers are going to know it. And I think that's why I've always stuck with I don't write unless I feel inspired to write. Like when I was doing my research paper, I kind of had a deadline. Like I had to write it, I had to get it out, and I had to submit that paper. I couldn't just sit on it like I do with this. But he told me to only write about the things that were inspiring to me. So, and he's like, it doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction. If it's not inspiring to you and you're writing about it, somebody's going to know. And so like there were a few parts in my paper that he circled, and he asked me specifically if it was something that I like to talk about. And it surprised me how well he could pick out the no's.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you don't like talking about this topic, so just take it out of your paper now and replace it with something else. Because like there's a plethora of knowledge about coronaviruses. So I didn't have to talk about SARS-CoV-2. I could have talked about anything else. I could have wrote a whole paper on just the genome of SARS-CoV-1 if I wanted to, if that was what my heart desired, and it wasn't. But it was surprising how he could point out in my paper what I didn't like and what I did like. So even though it's not like a formal piece of advice, it was something that I got from Dr. Zurich.
Well, thank you, Dr. Zurich, because that information helped me too.
Yeah, and it's really good advice no matter how you cut it. I mean, if you're not enjoying your writing, people can tell. I mean, you can sit down and force words onto the page, and we've talked about this. I don't know how many times on this podcast. You can sit and force words to come out onto the paper, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be engaging or inspiring once somebody reads it if you're doing that. If you really love it, then you're gonna show that love through the writing that you put down, and that's important, I think, to the process.
Yeah, I learned very early on that if I sat down and I just wrote just to write because I felt like I needed to, I usually removed it from my book.
Yeah.
More times than when I sat down because I had a really good idea or I was at a place in the book that I was excited for. Like, and I'm not saying that every author isn't going to have a part of their book that they're not extremely excited for, but you can really tell if you let it sit and you come back and you read those chapters or those scenes that they're not inspired. You can tell which one has like every emotion that you can think of, and then you can see the ones that are just meh.
Yep. So I was thinking about this today, and I'm going to bring it up because I think it breaks the monotony and it makes all three of us seem more human. You always tell the story of how you found out DL was writing a book the best way, because you act like I'm just the biggest rat on the planet. So I would really like for you to tell that story on here.
You are the biggest rat on the planet. Oh, I mean that in the most loving way possible. But no, she can keep a secret when she absolutely has to. But this one was not the one that she wanted to keep a secret for. So we were at my house for the first, right, for the New Year's. And we were talking, Cassie, Sarah and I were all sitting here talking, and all of a sudden Sarah drops the bombshell. Daniel wrote a book. I'm like, he did what? So Daniel gets bombarded by text messages from Cassie and I. You wrote a book? And so that's how we got the first manuscript of Origins.
I think it's really serendipitous because when I went to writing Origins, I thought, I'll get this written down, and I'd written a lot of stories as a kid, but I had never pushed them all the way to the point of completion. And I think that I had gotten it all the way through all the chapters, and for some reason I thought, who this is a good idea to mention this to? Sarah. And it wasn't. But
I beg to differ. It was.
It worked out really well because you had kind of already blazed that trail of figuring out how to get a cover artist and how to get a book edited and how to actually go about publishing it. Because in my way of thinking, I was like, well, I'm going to get the thing put down. If nobody ever reads it, nobody ever reads it. I'll have finished it and can say I finished the story. And then you guys were all about getting it published and figuring out self-publishing, and I'm like, that's fantastic. That's a lot better than what I was planning on doing with it. So I went ahead, and now we both have books out, and it's worked out really well, I think. And Sarah's finishing hers, and it's been a trip.
So I just remember when Daniel messaged me that he was writing a book, and I looked at Davey and was like, Daniel doesn't even like books.
Not generally.
And Davey's like, well, he likes his own books, obviously. And I said, he likes his own books, obviously.
Yeah,
and we're sitting at the house, and I just nonchalantly was like, oh, did you know Daniel wrote a book? And like the beeline eyes that I got, I was like, oh, I made a mistake. Look, here comes a consequence. Look, here comes a consequence.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how strange it was. It's just like, because Alaya had posted on Facebook months before that she was going to be putting out this story called Melody in Brooklyn, and that was before it had transformed into the Architecture of Anarchy. But I told Emily, I'm like, I didn't realize she wrote something, and it's really odd that she is putting something out before I did when I started mine in 2020, which, come to find out, you started it around the same time. And it was just wild. It's a weird ride, but it's been a good one, I think.
Well, and let's be real. So on TikTok, and we've talked about this, on TikTok, I see so many authors who are like, I don't have a friend to like talk about any of this with. Like, I'm seeking community. I want people who understand that, like, I am so mad at my character, or I'm so mad at this scene, or whatever. I have writer's block. And Perky points it out all the time that it's so cool that there's 4 of us who, even though we're related, but we're all friends enough to be like Daniel sent a link just right before we got on here to our group chat where he was like, hey, look, here's this opportunity for us to like have a booth somewhere, right? Like, it's cool to have that built-in community. And it's part of the reason why like I wanted to start this, is because I want people to see that like we can scream each other's name from the rooftops. Like, I can say, hey, go buy their book, because I'm not competing with you, right? Like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm not competing with either of you. I am literally watching the footsteps, the places where you're walking, and saying, okay, I know that's a safe space to step. I know that they are not going to give me a piece of information that makes me fall off one side or the other, right? Like, how weird is it, like, for you to all of a sudden have this group of people who are like coming beside you and kind of linking arms with you and saying, hey, just keep going? Like, is that crazy to you guys?
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's a good thing. Because
I think it's a great thing.
At the end of the day, I've never been much of like a competitor in the sense of I want to do better than everybody else. Because to me, there can never be enough books. There can never be enough fantasy and horror and all kinds of things. There can never be enough. I mean, I used to read upwards of a book a day when I was in undergrad because I love to read. So to think that, you know, I can read upwards of 365 books in a year, that's a lot of books. So if people don't release books, well, then
Yeah.
what else am I going to read, you know? And so at the end of the day, the way I look at it is that we all write, although we're in this sort of in the same genre, we all have different storylines for everything.
Oh, for sure.
Like, even though I have 4 completed books, I only have 1 published, but I have 4 completed books, they're still completely different than you two. And so at the end of the day, I think it's nice to say that we not only support each other, but we're not going to pick at each other if one person sells more books than the other or has a larger following on TikTok, Daniel.
Hey, it's worked out really well in
I'm
your
joking.
favor.
I'm joking. But that was funny. That was really funny. But at the end of the day, we can have what people would call sibling rivalry, but we understand that it's literally just child's play and that we all support each other and that we would literally scream about each other to the rooftops to let everybody know, hey, I have a sister-in-law that wrote this book, or hey, I have a brother-in-law that wrote this book. And I think that's a good thing because people can be very nasty.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah. What about you, Daniel?
Well, I think it's a great thing. Again, when I first started writing, it wasn't to necessarily publish anything, and if I was going to publish it, it was going to be traditional publishing. I was going to workshop it out to people, and I think that you guys, JC Brice especially, has changed my trajectory so much that my book is actually out there in the world because you guys are pests about things, and it's a good thing. And I think that sometimes all of us need that push from other people, and it's really important that we maintain that healthy push because it says, oh, my book is finished, you need to get yours out there and get it done. And that allows us to continue working forward and helping one another. I think that's great.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
I think for me,
go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead.
No. I'm gonna switch subjects here. So if you've got something else to say on that.
Okay. So I think the thing for me that's been so cool watching you guys, because I've written for so long and done nothing with my stories. Like, I've literally written for so long and done nothing with my stories. Seeing you guys do it made me brave enough to be like, I'm actually going to write something that I want to put out into the world. And like, that's a scary thing. Like, we talk about word counts, and like, that's my book is 96,000 words of my imagination of things that I sat around and thought of, right? And to see you guys and just hear you guys be like, it's going to be fine. Just get it out there. It's going to be fine. Like, having that support has been instrumental for me in like, my work is worth it. Even if imposter syndrome hits and I'm like, I'm a fraud. I can't even barely speak English. What makes me think I can write it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's been good, I think. And so, switching gears here just a little bit, you decided to go with KDP instead of like Ingram Spark. What was the reason for jumping on Amazon rather than some other self-publishing platform that exists out there?
Well, for starters, I just haven't done it. It's not that like I chose KDP over other self-publishing sites. I do have AOA on Draft to Digital or Digital to Draft. I don't know, whatever it's called. It's something like that. It's on there. I did look into Ingram Spark, but back when I published the book, it was $50 per format. So ebook, paperback, hardcover. And I just wasn't looking to spend that, considering the fact too that I had just spent a very good amount on my book cover after I went with Perky. And so I found KDP after I downloaded Kindle. So when I first started reading, I would read through a lot of the apps. Like there's like a bunch that you can download. There's Reddish, there's Dream, there's a ton of them. So I read there, and then I eventually switched to Kindle. And there was somebody who popped up on Facebook, because algorithm is great, and they happened to be self-published, and they talked about KDP. And that's how I found KDP back in, it was late 2019. It was around the same time that Mom fell and
Got her.
She decided she was going to eat the glass. So I think it was like December of 19, somewhere around there was when I first found KDP. And then shortly after was whenever I started to kind of write the book. I don't think I started writing though until May of 2020, because I remember being in physics, and I was in physics in the summer. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily picked KDP over anything else, but KDP has definitely been easy and efficient.
Yeah.
Trying to think. So Cassie brought up that your book is on Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I was gonna say, have we figured out how that happened? Like,
nope. No clue.
And it doesn't exist on
So at least now we know you can get it
You'd
there.
think that'd be it. Expanded distribution, maybe? I don't know. I don't know what does that.
I haven't clicked expanded distribution, so because when you do extended that thingy, you only get like 30% of your royalties from your books when you choose that through KDP. So it's definitely not there because I chose it. It just got put up there somehow. I don't know.
That's awesome.
So, on another question, your book has had 2 covers already. So, you originally released it with a cover that you designed, and then you released it with a secondary cover that was designed by Perky Visuals, who we've talked to on here. What made you decide to break down and change it?
It looked like crap.
Fair.
Yes. Why else would I change it?
It's not because it's a special edition. It just looked like crap the first time.
It looked like crap. You're laughing, but I'm serious.
No, I know. That's why I'm laughing.
I'm serious. That's really why I decided to change it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it was a good first try. It was great and all, but I don't have the patience to sit down and do anything with technology. I hate technology. It's a huge inconvenience sometimes, and I did not want to sit down and try it. I actually, before I found Perky, I had purchased it's like a bundle thing that you can purchase online, and you get all of the apps you need to like make a book cover. I got into Photoshop and I realized that I was way in over my damn head, and I just needed to go and hire somebody to do it. And so in one of the support groups for self-publishers, Alex was in there, and I kept seeing him comment, and he would comment some of his past work. And then the deciding factor for me was he uploaded a picture of it's called A Speck of Darkness. And so that cover was the one where I was like, I think I'm going to talk to him. And so I did, but he did Unorthodox first. He did not do The Architecture of Anarchy. So I did not change that cover until January of this year.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Perky.
I like it.
Definitely not
So
crap.
you met Perky through Facebook.
Definitely not crap, no. It
Oh,
was worth every penny. Worth every penny.
Every penny. We talked to Perky last time, and he said that you guys met through a Facebook page that isn't even there anymore.
Possibly, yeah.
But he said he was
I
like,
believe it was the Book Spot hangout, because that's where it was posted to. He's in other support groups.
yeah.
I first found him. It's actually called Self-Publisher Support Group on Facebook. I first started seeing his content there, and then it moved slowly to the Book Spot Hangout was where we were at. And that's where the author of A Speck of Darkness posted her cover, and then he posted shortly after. And so that's when I decided to go ahead and message him.
Well, and I started seeing his artwork that you started sending cover, and I was like, I gotta go to Instagram and follow this man and like see his artwork. So followed him on Facebook, and then Daniel went with him, and now Cassie has gone with him for her book, and I'm like, my book's totally gonna be done by Alex.
Yeah, he's done an amazing job, and I really like the way that he works. Back when I first started kind of planning my podcast, I was venting to Jacob about how I talked to a couple of editors to see about having my podcast videos edited into a trailer. And I told him, I was like, Perky, when I first messaged him, he was so concise, and he made sure to answer every single question I sent in order. And he would like reply to each message that I sent. And he always made sure to answer my questions. But whenever I would talk to other people, especially editors, about editing the podcast into like a season trailer, these people would skip over some of like the most important questions and just answer like one. And I was like, you guys, this is like awful. Like, you guys are trash. So I got very spoiled with Perky because he's always just been very concise, and he's always answered the questions and never left me hanging wondering on anything that I had a question for.
We talked a lot about Daniel's cover. Go ahead, Daniel. Yeah, it's laggy on my end, so you go ahead.
We cat had to make an appearance.
Right, I saw that. We went with Perky, yeah, both of us, and I think he's a phenomenal artist. I just think that the best advice you can give someone is to invest in that artwork on your cover. It's really important to put your best foot forward when you're selling something to anybody, and it's always good to say don't judge a book by its cover, but people do. And if you don't have that good looking cover, I don't think that many sales are going to come your way unless you just get some kind of miracle to work. So that's my advice there. Invest in a cover, guys. If you can do it yourself, do it yourself. Yeah. But that was not me. So
yeah, no, definitely.
The thing I loved is watching him take things that I read in both of your books and being able to get it out as actual artwork and make it a visual thing.
Yeah.
Especially like Alaya, I had seen your first cover. Like when you made your first cover, like I was one of the first people you sent it to like check fonts and all that stuff. And I think there's going to be a part of my heart that just always loves that original cover just because it was your baby, right? It was your first one. But now like the cover when people walk past it at my house, they're like, oh my gosh, what's that? And the same for Daniel's. They're like, hey, what book is that? And I'm like, oh, that's my brother's book, or oh, that's my sister's book. Like, you should read those. They're really good. Like, I loaned both of those books out to my friend last night. She came back to the house. She was like, hey, can I borrow both of those? And I was like, yes, ma'am, you may take those home with you. You can totally read them, fall in love with them. But like the artwork was something that you guys very much, if you're going to invest money, that was one thing you guys told me. You were like, invest money there. Like, invest your money there. So,
yes.
Yeah. Did we have any more questions for her?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Where can everybody find you if they're wanting to follow or find your books? things like that?
Well, you can find me on Facebook. So JC Brice is my name on Facebook, and then you can find me on TikTok. It's JC Brice or at JC Brice Author on TikTok. I try to keep all of my stuff the same. I do have an Instagram. I just don't remember what it's under. I think it's under JC Brice, but I don't really post on Instagram very often. So,
And where can they find Architecture of Anarchy?
Amazon.
All right.
And apparently Barnes and Noble.
One final question. Out of the two of us, who's your favorite?
Sarah.
That's so obvious. Is it not? Come on.
I mean,
I had to ask it.
I'm her only competition on TikTok. How can I be her favorite?
Okay, so I actually want to talk about the TikTok thing because we brought it up, but I don't know that anybody listening will actually know what you're talking about. So, Daniel, what happened to you on TikTok when you tried to go for JC Brice?
So, my initial thought was that she was at 900 followers or something, and I had 750, and I thought, this is a small gap. I can close this by just begging people to follow me instead of following her. And what ended up happening was she followed me, or she ended up making it to 1,000, not only before me, but within like 5 hours of me posting that video. And now she's sitting at what, 1,600 or something, and I'm over here with my 950 followers. Still 3 weeks later after this incident. So I got my butt kicked on that.
So the funny thing was he actually stitched her video on TikTok. All I saw was Elias' face with a big stitch incoming. And he's like, y'all, I want to get to 1,000 before she does. And I'm like, what the heck is happening right now? And then the very next morning, like 10 o'clock in the morning, I scroll on TikTok and I see my brother has posted a new video. So I'm like watching it. And he just has like the cap cut of Ron Burgundy where he's like, well, that escalated quickly. And I immediately messaged JC and I was like, hey, you got 1,000 followers, man. Send like, what the heck happened?
Yeah, TikTok is definitely
what I expected it to.
It worked out for somebody.
It's odd. I go through periods where I will gain upwards of like 100 followers in like a couple of days, and then I will go to where like I lose a few, or I'll be stagnant for a while, and then it'll do the same thing. Like it's like a revolving cycle. So like if you go to my analytics and you look at it, it's like
yeah, same.
It's the oddest thing in the world. I don't know. I don't like it. It's weird.
It's never consistent.
No, it's not. No.
All right. Well, if that's all the questions we have, Daniel, where can they find your book?
Well, I am D.L. Golden. You can find my book Origins on Amazon. You can follow me on TikTok at D.L. Golden and on Facebook. I also have Instagram, but don't use that much either. Sarah, what would you have to add here?
Follow us on socials. I will post the links in the description. We would appreciate the likes and the shares. Tell your friends about us, that we're super supportive and we'd love to have you in our community. We are the Authors Chaos, and we are so glad that you were able to join us today.
Thanks.
Yeah.